Hi, this is Stephanie Allen, and I decided to do my project on interactive notebooks. I have seen a lot about interactive notebooks online and heard a few teachers talking about them, and my initial thought was, wow, that's a lot of work, it's way too time consuming, there's no way I would ever use those in my classroom. However, when deciding on a project for this course, I thought, well, why not research interactive notebooks and see what they are really all about and if they are beneficial and to see if my opinion would change. So here's what I have learned about interactive notebooks. First of all, the history of interactive notebooks can trace all the way back to Charlotte Mason. I'm sure many of you know about her and her teaching methods. Well, she was in favor of students learning through hands-on and interaction. So she would have them create nature journals and book of centuries. Although they weren't called interactive notebooks at the time, they are very similar to what we consider an interactive notebook today. Well, in 1999, History Alive first introduced interactive notebooks as we know them today. And History Alive is a source that allows students to experience history through different interactions and hands-on projects. And so what are interactive notebooks? Well, they are a unique, hands-on, and personalized approach to note-taking, a way for students to organize what they learn, and they help students make knowledge and skill connections in their own way. So instead of just writing verbatim what the teacher says or copying notes from the board, this allows students to take it a step further, as we will learn throughout this project. So the purpose of interactive notebooks is to put learning literally in the hands of the students. As Kelly Jeffrey put it, she is a ELA curriculum director at Studies Weekly. She says, they are a tool to get information onto a page using more of students' senses and more of their brain. The operative word is interactive. They are interacting with their notebooks, with the information, with different texts and images, with each other, and with the teacher. So this allows students of all learning types to become involved. You're focusing on each individual learning strengths and helping them apply it so they can better understand what is being taught. So who could use interactive notebooks? Well, in reality, anybody can. They can be used for any age or grade level, and they can be adaptable for any subject. Now, obviously, what a kindergarten is going to put in their interactive notebook is going to be different than what a college student would put in theirs, but that's what makes them unique. So now that we've learned what they are and the purpose of them, let's get started on creating one. First of all, we need to have a plan. You need to create a general plan or idea of what you want to include. Of course, if you're a middle school or high school teacher and you teach strictly math courses or strictly science courses, obviously you know you're going to be doing a math or science book or whatever your subject is. But if you're teaching in elementary or you teach more than one subject, you need to decide, am I going to have my students do this for every subject, or am I just going to focus it on 1 and 2 or just on 1? So that's, your first thing you need to figure out. Then you need to think about the topics you want to cover. Am I going to put every single lesson in the notebook? I don't think I would recommend that, but you might want to do that. Or do I want to just put the highlights? What kind of order is it going to go in? Is it going to be in a timeline? Is it going to be alphabetical? And then the style. There's 4 main styles you can choose from. On the bottom corner, we see the left side, right side method. And when interactive notebooks first were introduced, they were mainly for high school and college students. So this was the method that was taught to students when they first came out. On the left side is where students would put the teacher-directed notes. And on the right side, the students would then write a reflection or ask a question about something that was taught in the lesson. So it was called input-output. And that was the main way that the interactive notebooks was first set up. However, as they begin to trickle down into the lower grades, you see more types and methods of interactive notebooks being introduced. You have the cut and glue style. The picture in the middle is actually 2 examples of some of my students' work that we did this week in class as we began to implement interactive notebooks. We learned consonants and our vowels, and then we discussed our 5 senses. So they colored them and then cut and glued them, and then under each flap they put their answers. They wrote things that they can see. They wrote something they could taste. They wrote the consonants under the consonant tree. So that's a cut and glue examples. And then on the top corner you see the note taking with pictures. So the students didn't just write notes, they drew illustrations to help them better remember what was being taught. Or if they had access to a computer or something, they can make a digital notebook. So now the question is, what type of notebook should I use? Well, there's really 3 main options. You have the spiral notebook option, and the pros to that are they can be folded in half, the page sizes are larger, it's inexpensive, and they sometimes come with pockets for storing materials. However, cons to those are the pages can fall out easily, the spirals can get snagged or become misshapen, the page count's not consistent at all, and they're not as durable as a binder. So you can weigh the pros and cons and figure out if you want to use a spiral notebook. And if you do, a couple tips are you can wrap duct tape around the spirals to make it more durable, and you can keep the notebooks in a central location instead of having the students keep them in their desk or their lockers. Maybe have a book bin that they're all kept in so they're not easily damaged. So if you don't want to go the spiral notebook route, you can do a composition notebook. And the pros to those are the pages do not fall out as easily. It's a standard page size and page count, and they are inexpensive as well. However, they cannot be folded in half, and the page size is smaller, so it doesn't allow for as much content on the page. And again, they're not as durable as a binder. If you choose to use the composition notebook, a tip might be to, when you're printing off the materials, is to reduce the size of the page you're printing to 85 or 90% in order to make it fit onto the composition notebook page. If you want to go for a more durable option, then I would recommend the 3-ring binder. The pros to this are the pages can be easily added, moved, or removed. So they mess up, they want to start over, they can just take the page out, throw it away. It doesn't affect the binding of the book at all. Or if they get a page out of order, they can move it back to where it needs the right section, or maybe you reviewed multiplication and you want to put that page in with the rest of the multiplication pages. It's easy to manage and move around the pages. They can also be removed individually for grading if you choose to grade it. The 3-ring binder allows for you to just give them a printed handout to put in there, and they're more durable. However, the pages do fall out easily, and the holes, as we know, over time, they do tend to rip on the pages, so that makes the pages not as durable. They're more expensive, and students can easily lose or misplace a random page, and they are harder to store. If you are going to use a 3-ring binder, I would suggest having hole reinforcers for when the holes on the pages do become damaged. They can just reinforce the holes, and they don't lose the entire page. So now that you've chosen which notebook you want to do, you need to set it up. I decided to use the spiral notebooks for my class. So I went and I bought each student a spiral notebook. They did not have to purchase it themselves. And so that's what we are using for our interactive notebook. So the first thing I would suggest is to allow the students to personalize their notebook. Of course, they want their name on it. And then let them decorate the covers, especially if you're elementary and teachers. Let them have fun decorating the covers. I had several stickers, like tons of sticker sheets. I let them choose, and they just had fun decorating it. And as you can see, they went sticker crazy, as first graders do. Some of them drew pictures on theirs. These are just a few examples of some of the ways my students decorated their covers, and they had a lot of fun doing it. I would also suggest numbering the pages in the book. That way you can say you should find, polygons on page 32, so they can go to page 32 to find the polygons. However, if you are an elementary teacher, I would not suggest having, especially lower elementary, not having the students number every page all in one setting, because that's going to become tiring and tedious to them, and as a first grade teacher, I know they're going to get confused and lost, and they may not remember the numbers in order. So for elementary, I suggest maybe pages 1 through 10 at a time, and then, a week or two later do 11 through 20 and number it that way so the students aren't so overwhelmed. I would also suggest a table of contents. That way they can keep track of what is on what page, and this will also help as a study guide. If they're studying for the Civil War, they could go and look at their table of contents and see that the Civil War was on page 12, so they know to go to page 12 to study for the Civil War. Again, for elementary, I suggest maybe having a printed table of contents so they're not having to try to figure out how to fill it up themselves. And then also consider putting a bookmark and a storage envelope in the notebooks, and we'll discuss those in a little bit in more detail. So they are going to require some materials and supplies. If you chose the composition of the spiral notebook, then that's all you need is the notebook. You do not need the notebook paper, but if you chose the binder, you will need notebook paper. You will need a writing utensil, a pencil or pen, and then after that it's if you're doing cut and glue, you need glue, scissors, crayons, markers, tape, staples, colored pencils, so anything that you want the students to use for decorative purposes or whatever, however you want to do it. Make sure you have all the materials and supplies that you need beforehand. So what can go into an interactive notebook? Well, really anything can go into it. You can do graphic organizers, maps, graphs, charts, drawings, diagrams, articles, pictures, foldables, just handwritten notes. So the list is endless. Over here on the left, I found a picture of, I would say, a middle or high school class example of a graph that they filled out to show you that. And then the one on the right is actually a couple more of my students' examples that we did in class this week. We were learning our short vowel sounds. So instead of just repeating the short vowel sounds over and over, I had to cut and glue flaps that they could color, and then underneath each flap, they wrote 3 words that went with that vowel. So for they cat, bat, hat, or whatever they chose to do. And so they wrote words under the flaps, and then we're also learning our colors. So I had the crayons that they could color to remember put the words with the right color. So some tips and tricks. I would suggest, like I said earlier, a ribbon bookmark. This will help the students keep the place. Instead of saying open up to the next blank page, you have students flipping forever trying to find the next blank page, or they may just open up some random blank page. The bookmark will allow them to know where they are in the book, and so it makes it faster. The envelope for storage, this is actually envelopes we put in our notebooks, my class did. And I'm going to use these to put the papers in as they cut them out. So when I plan on giving them the notebook materials for morning work on day, I'm going to do an interactive notebook. So they can color it and cut and glue it during the morning activities, and then they can put it in their envelope to store, and then when it comes time for us to do it in math class or language or whatever subject is for, we'll take it out and we'll do it as a class, and we'll discuss what answers can go with it. And so that'll make it easy for them to store it and not lose all the pieces. Another tip, I found this online and I think it's genius, not just for interactive notebooks, but for any cut and glue project, is a glue sponge. What you do is you just get a Tupperware container, a sponge, and some Elmer's glue, and you put the sponge in the container, and then you just empty the entire bottle of glue into the container, and then you put the lid on, lay it flat, and then overnight the glue will seep into the sponge. So now all the students have to do is go and tap their page onto the sponge, and it's ready to stick into their books. I think this will save a lot on the mess, because as a first grade teacher, I know how messy glue can get. Even though you show them over and over again the proper way to use it, you still have those that go glue crazy. So I plan on implementing the glue sponges for any cut and glue project we do in the future. I also recommend having an example notebook. This is my example notebook that I'm going to make throughout the year, so my students can see what the page is supposed to look like, and it can also be used, like if a student is absent, they can go and take my notebook and see what they missed and how to set the page up. I also found online the Tidy Tabs, which I also think is brilliant for any cut and glue project. Instead of having students get up every 2 seconds, as they do, to throw their trash away, you can have tidy tabs set out at each table or each row, however your classroom's set up. And they just keep all the trash in the tidy tub. And then when the project's over, the row leader or table captain or whatever the case may be, just goes, empties the tidy tub, stacks them back up. Then you stack them all back up wherever they're located, and cleanup is a breeze. So tidy tubs, I'm definitely going to implement in my class. And then, of course, we've all seen the storage caddies, so I would recommend prepping ahead of time. The supplies that you know you're going to need, if they're just going to need pencils, just make sure you've got pencils out, pens. Of course, students should have these supplies with them, but just in case, make sure you've got whatever they need. Scissors, if you want them to add color, have coloring utensils. Also, make sure you have enough handouts of whatever it's going to be, because it does happen where you're caught, 1 or 2 short, and then you think, oh, I'll have to do this another day. So make sure you prepped ahead of time, and it'll save initial time in class. So there's several pros to interactive notebooks. First of all, it allows students to learn and study at the same time. So not only are they listening and learning, but they're also studying as they're, filling out the notebook. It allows for differentiated and personalized learning to take place. As we all know, each student learns differently, so this allows them to put their own spin on the topic, on the lesson being learned. They can be powerful educational tools, as students can use these notebooks to go and explain what they learned to a friend or maybe to their parents or somebody that was absent. You can have the students teach it to them instead of you having to explain it to them. It allows students to be active participants in their learning, and they become portfolios of the students' work. They can also be valuable study tools. Like I said earlier, they're going to be, having a test on the American Revolution, so they can go and look up where they took notes or filled out activities on the American Revolution and study those. They are works in progress, which allow students to learn from their mistakes. We should use these as opportunities to teach the children to do their best, but also if they do mess up, instead of getting upset that they messed up, just show them the proper way to do that and help them learn from their mistakes so they do better next time. They are fun, hands-on, and engaging. I don't know how many times my students said while we did the 4 projects we did this week, how much they enjoyed it and how much fun they had, and they were even asking if they could do more, and they wanted to put more stickers on their books. They wanted more things to put in their notebooks. So I definitely know from first-hand experience that this is true, that the students enjoy doing it. It keeps things organized. So now instead of having a bunch of random paper shoved into their desk or the bottom of their backpacks all crumpled up, now they have a place to put things, and it's teaching them to be organized as well. And it allows students to develop pride and ownership in their work. My students wanted to show their friends what they had done. They wanted to, show them their covers, the pages they had made. So they were definitely very excited about what they had made. There are also some cons. You may think classes are too short or there's not enough time. This is what I thought at first too, that there's definitely no way this will fit in. But there's definitely some ways around that. You can stretch it out over a couple of days, or you could have a week-long project. So there's definitely some ways around that issue. There may be a lack of supplies. You may think cutting and gluing take up too much time. Maybe you have parent volunteers or student aides or something that they could do the cutting ahead of time so the students aren't having to cut in class. You may think they can be too messy. Again, use the tidy tabs. Teach students how to clean up as they go. Some may think it's difficult for absent students to catch up, which that could be true as well, but if you're keeping a master copy as an example, they can just always go and look at that to figure out what to do. It's just the way that we as teachers are used to teaching and the way we think. I definitely found this out to be true. Instead of, when I was trying to figure out ways to implement this, and when we were, I knew we were going to be doing our short vowel sounds, and most of them learned them hopefully in kindergarten, so I wanted to do something that was more fun for them instead of just repeating the short vowel sounds over and over again, So it shifted the way I looked at the lesson and the way I taught it, and it made it more enjoyable for the students. It can be difficult to find appropriate activities, but if you look online, there's hundreds of things out there if you just type in what you're looking for. And there's even some companies that make specified interactive notebooks for each subject and grade level as well, that you can find those. And you may want to try to find out the fair way to assess the notebooks can be difficult, but we'll talk more about that in just a second. So if you decide to assess the interactive notebooks, you can use a grading rubric. And if you are going to use a grading rubric, I would suggest having the students glue in like a template of the rubric so they know what you're looking for in the notebook and how you're going to grade them. I would definitely, I would think this would be more for the middle and high school grades instead of the elementary. For elementary, you may just want to do a participation grade if they are participating in class and are trying to follow along and do it with you, or you may choose not to assess it at all, and that's what I decided to do for this year. It's my first year implementing them. I just decided not to assess them, just to figure out what works best for me. In a year or two, I might decide to assess them and do a participation grade or something, but the choice is totally up to the teacher. So, as with anything, we need to figure out how we can apply this to our students biblically and spiritually. So when I was teaching my students about their interactive notebooks, I said, you need to make sure you're doing your best. God always wants us to do our best with everything that we do. As Ecclesiastes 9:10 tells us, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. So God does not want us to treat this as just a fun, goofy, silly time. He wants us to be serious about it and do our best. I also told my students that Galatians 6:4 says that let every man prove his own work. I told them that this is their work. It's not my work. It's not your friend's work. It's their own work, and they need to make it their own so that they can learn what they can do and they can show others what they can do. And so I was trying to teach them how God wants us to work diligently. I also took this, and in my mind, I thought I was reminded of how we are all unique. Psalms 139 is an excellent chapter to remind us of how special we all are and that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. And the entire chapter, as I'm sure you all know, teach us how special and God created us. And Romans 12 teaches us that we all had unique gifts, and that was something I was trying to keep in mind as I planned on ways to implement the interactive notebooks. I can use these to apply to all of my students' learning styles, to the hands-on, the kinesthetic, the ones that want to be active and moving, the ones that want to see it, the ones that learn by hearing me explain things to them. So it's a way to teach to each learning style all at the same time. And it also allowed my students to show their uniqueness and their creativity. I loved watching my students this week in the 4 that we did in class. I got to see their personalities come out and their creativity come out. And I got to see their individuality come out. It wasn't like we were all doing the same cut and glue. I mean, we all doing the same cut and glue project, but it's not like it all had to be the same answer like the other cut and glues we were doing. They got to make it however they wanted to make it. And I loved seeing the way my students put their own individual stamp on the projects. So, has my mind changed on interactive notebooks? I'm going to have to say yes. I do think that they can be beneficial if they are applied correctly. And I do think that they help students find learning more enjoyable. At least they did for my first grade students this week. And I plan on using them throughout the year and seeing how my students grow throughout the year and seeing how much fun they have and what they learn. And I want to see more of their creativity and uniqueness as we create them this year. So yes, my opinion has definitely changed on interactive notebooks. These are the references I used when studying about interactive notebooks. If you're interested in learning more, if you've used interactive notebooks and already, I would love to see how they work for you and what your opinions are. If not, I encourage you to at least consider trying them because, like me, you may find that your mind might change and that they may be a useful tool for you to use in your classroom.